Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another focus activity with Maya. My name is Michelle. I am originally from Pakistan, and I've been teaching in Milano Meravili with Sean. Um,
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Sean. I'm from Ireland. I've been in Milan in the same school as Michelle since September.
okay, and today we are going to talk about your neighborhood or our neighborhoods. What is a neighborhood? A
Hmm.
neighborhood is the area you live, right?
Yeah, yes. And I think this is the American spelling, no?
Yes.
Would you spell it like this? Because
No.
okay. So I would spell it like this, I think, with a U. No?
Absolutely. Yep.
Neighbor.
And the same for the word
Yeah.
color, right? The Americans spell it Color, and the British spell it, or the UK spells it Colour. That's how we spell it as well.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of
Yeah,
students
exactly.
joining us. We have Maurizio who says, "Hi, I'm Maurizio from Parma, and I go back to the second half of the last century." I love that intro. Nice to meet you, Maurizio. And we also have Donald. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us. If you're here, write to us and let us know your name and where you're from. We love it when you guys interact with
Mm.
us and participate in the conversation.
Yeah.
We have Donald from Lonate, Pozzolo. Where is that?
Hmm. Haven't heard of that.
Okay, first off, we have this is what we are going to look at today. Would you like to read, Sean?
Sure. So in today's focus activity, we're looking at some neighborhood vocabulary, the two forms there is and there are, and adverbs of frequency. So really, altogether, we're going to use these things to describe your neighborhood.
Fantastic. Ask
Okay.
and answer these questions. While we ask each other these questions, we'd love for you guys to write to us and answer these questions with us. Sean, would you like to read, please?
So, my neighborhood, ask and answer these questions. Number one, where do you live? Number two, what neighborhood do you live in? Number three, is your neighborhood big or small? Four, do you like your neighborhood? Five, do you like your neighbors?
So, a neighborhood is the area you live in, it is the community in the city. A neighbor is the person or neighbors, the people who live next to you. So, Sean, where do you live?
I live in Milan. Where do you live?
I live in Milan as well. Donald says he lives in a city near Malpensa.
Okay, good.
So, would that
And
be
we have
a city?
Larissa from Milan as well.
Would that be a city
Mhm.
or a town? So, what is the difference
Oh,
between a
yeah.
city, a town, and a village?
Mm.
So, Sean,
So,
would you
a
like
city
to?
is the biggest. I would,
Mhm.
a city is the biggest. I would say more than 100,000 people, usually. And then it depends a bit the difference between a town or a village. I think a town is more than 1,000 people, usually, and then a village is less.
Okay, so the biggest is the city. An example would be Milan. What could be an example of a town in Italy? Perhaps Buzzo Art.
Um,
So I think maybe perhaps I can't think of an example of a town in Italy because I don't know many towns in Italy. But any place, I guess, less than 50,000 people, right, would be a town.
yeah, definitely. I mean, near us, I can think of Monza, maybe.
Oh, that's a good example. Absolutely. Monza is a small town, is a, not a small, an average sized town. That's a good example. We also have Gabriella, who is Maurizio's wife. Hi, Gabriella.
Mhm. The whole family.
Love it. Maurizio says he likes his neighborhood because it is small and with a lot of greenery to run around. Okay, after COVID, absolutely.
Wow, already. Oh, good.
Um, what neighborhood do you live in, Sean?
Okay, I live in a neighborhood in northern Milan called Turro. I have a difficult time pronouncing it because it has a double R, which is difficult. Which neighborhood do you live in?
I live in the beautiful neighborhood of Porta Romana. It's towards the southeast of Milan, and I love it.
Mhm, good,
So, is your neighborhood big or small,
good.
Sean?
It's quite small. It's just kind of a few blocks around a metro stop, I would say.
Hmm.
Is your neighborhood big or small?
I think Porta Romana is a little big, not very big, because
Hmm.
it's quite nice. Do you like your neighborhood?
Yeah, I do. It's quite particular, but I think it has its charm. I like it. Do you like your neighborhood?
I do like my neighborhood because it is lively. So, lively is an adjective, which means it has a lot of life. It's very energetic. And Sean, I believe we've spoken about lively and
Hmm.
chaotic.
Mm. Yeah, lively and chaotic. So lively is positive, means full of energy, full of activity, and chaotic is not so positive. It means busy in a negative way. There's too much activity, too many people, maybe a lot of noise, too much activity.
Right. So there's confusion.
Mm, yeah, yeah, definitely. It's not serene. It's not calm.
Okay. How would you describe your neighborhood?
How would I describe my neighborhood? It's quiet. It's definitely quiet. I would say it is, I don't know how to describe it. It's quiet and kind of it's interesting. It's quite a diverse neighborhood. There's not just Italians, there's people from many different parts of the world. And that makes the neighborhood interesting. There's a lot of ethnic shops and restaurants and things like this.
We use the word ethnic. What does that mean?
Hmm. So, an ethnicity, ethnic means, well, if you use the word ethnic, it generally means an ethnicity which is not the majority. So, an ethnicity is a nationality, really, or an identification with a certain group of people. My ethnicity is Irish, yours is Pakistani. So, it's generally related to your nationality.
Okay. And do you like your neighbors?
I don't know my neighbors. I think it's very common in Milan not to know your neighbors. I have one neighbor who is always on the phone, which is a bit annoying. But other than that, no, I don't know them. Do you know your neighbors?
I do know a few of my neighbors. I have a next door neighbor who is an 84-year-old woman, and she's
Wow.
absolutely lovely. She's always giving us things like pies and cakes. It's it's really nice. It's like living next to your
Mm.
grandma.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
It is. And I have a neighbor upstairs who has a dog. So I've obviously become friends with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Okay, our students are writing in. Guys, write to us and let us know. Do you like your neighborhood? How would you describe it? Do you like your neighbors? What are they like? Larissa says she has lived in Milan for 22 years. Wow.
Mm.
And her neighborhood is Corvetto. I've lived in Corvetto my first year in Milan. That's where I lived.
Okay.
It's quite close by to Porta Romana as well.
Okay. Mm.
Maurizio says his wife is an excellent cook. Okay, so as I'm sure our students are writing in, and let's give them 10 seconds. In the meanwhile, what is your favorite thing about your neighborhood?
Um, It's very well connected to the center. It's very well connected to work. I can get the metro and it takes 15 to 20 minutes. So it's really very convenient for me. What's your favorite thing about your neighborhood?
I think it's the same. It's one of the reasons I moved into this neighborhood because it is centrally located and it is well connected to the rest of Milan.
Mm, yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on. You guys can keep writing in and we'll read your answers when we receive them. Now, vocabulary matching. Would you like to read, Sean?
Sure. So match the pictures to the photo. We have library, post office, dog park, pharmacy, hair salon, church, and school.
Okay, picture A. What do you think?
I think it's a library. And certainly for Italians, this is an important one
Mm-hmm.
because a library is where a public building where you go to borrow books, not to buy books. You buy books in the bookshop or the bookstore. It's important difference.
Right, and there's also a false friend in Italian, right? What is
Yeah, yeah.
so libreria is bookcase and not library in Italian. So that is something that you guys should keep an eye out for. Remember, library and libreria in Italian are two very different things. It is a false friend. Okay, Maurizio coming in with the answers. He says A is a library, as does Larissa. And he says B is a church. What do you think? Is B a church?
Yeah, it looks like it anyway.
B is a church. Okay, what about C?
I think Maurizio has it as well. It's a post office, the letterbox in particular.
Mm-hmm. So the place where you go to mail your letters is called the post office. But in the picture here, this red object, as Sean said, it is called a letterbox. This is where you drop your letter, you put your letter inside the box, and the postman collects all the letters and takes them to the post office.
Hmm,
Picture D.
okay.
Pharmacy, fantastic. And E is a school. Donald also participating. He says it's a pharmacy. You guys are right. Fantastic. It is a pharmacy. So the place where you buy your medicines is called a pharmacy. But in the picture, you can see pills.
Yeah.
Maurizio says E is school, and so does Larissa. Fantastic work, guys. Absolutely. Okay, and Maurizio says F is a dog park, and so does Larissa, and G is a hair salon. Okay, so a hair salon is where you would go to get your hair cut, and this one is for the ladies. You know the place where you get to do your manicure? That place is called a nail salon.
Mm.
Okay, if you have any questions, please write to us and let us know. Fantastic work, everyone. You guys got all the answers right. Now we move on to adverbs. Use these phrases, words and phrases to describe habits. Before we jump into this, what does this mean, Sean? How often?
Yeah, so how often? This is the question form in English to ask someone the frequency that they do something. So, for example, how often do you go to the cinema? How often, with what frequency, how frequently do you go to the cinema? So this is about frequency. How often?
So, we are going to learn about adverbs of frequency. We have never. Okay, how would you describe never?
Never is absolutely not even once, not one time, absolutely no occasion ever.
Not even once. Okay,
Mm.
always?
Always is constantly, continuously,
Right, all the
every day or
time.
more. Yeah.
Every day is every day. Once a week, one time in a week. So in English, we do not say one time or two times, or we say once and twice.
Exactly.
And these are the examples. I never go to the dog park. I go to the cinema once a month. I go to school every day. So we are going to use the question phrase how often and ask each other questions. You guys are feel free to answer the questions or ask us your own questions. If you are curious about something, use the question phrase how often and ask us anything you'd like. Sean, how often do you go to the cinema?
Um, I go to the cinema once in a while, sometimes. So once in a while is sometimes, not very regularly, not very often. Maybe once every 3, 4 months, something like this.
Larissa says every day I go to the gym.
Wow, good,
Fantastic.
good for you, Larissa. I cannot say the same.
Okay, so just one thing. You could say every day I go to the gym or I go to the gym every day. We usually don't put it in between, we don't put every day in between the subject and the verb. Mauricio says twice a week I go to English in my app. Fantastic. But you are missing a verb here. So twice a week I go to study English, right? Or twice a week I study English. You can skip the go if you like. I study English in my app. Oh wow, Maurizio, taking it up. We rarely go to the cinema. Fantastic use of the adverb rarely. Good job.
Good. Hmm. Michelle,
Mhm.
how often do you go to the hair salon?
I rarely go to the hair salon. I actually haven't been in 2 years.
Okay, wow. Good.
The reason is I have curly hair. So hair which is like mine, like this, is called curly in English. I
Mm,
have curly hair, and most stylists do not know how to handle curly hair.
really? Even in Italy, where lots of people have curly hair?
They do, but it is abnormally expensive.
Okay.
Donald says, I go to the cinema once a week. Nice. What kind of movies do you like, Donald? Larissa says, I twice a week go to the supermarket. So again, remember what we spoke about? Twice a week, you can say, I go to the supermarket twice a week. Okay, so I want you to pay attention to the construction over here. Earlier, Maurizio says, we rarely go to the cinema. He put an adverb between the subject and the verb. However, when Larissa did it, it was wrong. The reason behind this is the verb, the adverb you use, right? So when you use words like rarely, often, never, you can put them in between the subject and the verb. But when you use um, adverbs of frequency such as once a month, twice a week, or every day, we usually put them at the end of the sentence. Okay, so that is the general rule, and I think you'll get it with practice. Maurizio says, we often go to the countryside with our friends to taste local foods. That's exciting. I would love that. That's what I did last summer. I had 2 summers ago. I had some free time, so I would travel to cities around Milan, tasting the food.
Hmm, yeah. Can't at the moment, unfortunately.
Yes, this is true. Okay, last question. How often do you go to a restaurant?
Um, I I rarely go to restaurants. Um, they're very expensive usually, and I like to cook for myself, so I don't really. For me, it's as nice to stay home and cook what I want as to go to a restaurant. I go
Hmm.
to the restaurants if my parents take me or someone else is paying, something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I go to the restaurant, I think, once a month.
Okay.
Hmm. I usually end up going about once a month. Usually, I have a dinner planned with my friends. So that's where we gather and we catch up.
Great.
So in English, we use the phrase to catch up when we talk about receiving news from each other. So telling each other your news is called to catch up.
Hmm.
And of course, this is usually done with friends because that's who you would tell your news to. Okay, what's in my English school neighborhood? So over here, it says in this neighborhood there is a school. In this neighborhood there are two dog parks. In this neighborhood there are lots of restaurants. So I think it's important to note there is and there are. So we use there is when we use singular nouns, for example, a school. We use there are for more than one noun. So there are two dog parks. What is there in my English school's neighborhood?
Yeah. So on Via Meravigli, tell us about your school, everyone. We'll talk about ours. Via Meravigli is very central in Milan. Um, there is a very big church nearby. In fact, there is a cathedral, the Duomo of Milan, just 2 or 3 minutes walk from the school. So there is a cathedral, there is the Duomo of Milan. Um, Something plural, Michelle? So a plural noun?
There are many, lots of companies.
Yeah. Mm, yeah.
So lots of is another way to say many. So we have Ernest and Young, we have the Chamber of Commerce, we have many companies, and there are many bars.
Yeah. Yeah. There's many things. There are many pharmacies, many clothes shops, many bars. It's very central in Milan where a lot of activity, very lively, I would say.
Absolutely. But there isn't a library.
No.
Okay, so if you notice, we have contracted is not. So there is not is colloquially spoken as, well, that's redundant, is spoken as there isn't.
Yeah.
And we write it that way as well.
Mm, yes. In conversation, I would never say there is not, always there isn't.
Absolutely. Larissa says, in this neighborhood, there are many schools. Yes, this is true. There are many schools.
Mm.
Okay, could you read, please? Would you like to read?
So, meeting with the mayor, preparing to tell the mayor what is and isn't in your neighborhood. So, in my neighborhood, there is a dog park, but there isn't a school. In my neighborhood, there are 3 supermarkets, but there aren't any libraries.
Okay, in my neighborhood, there are four supermarkets. There are many cafes. There is a florist. There is a church, but there aren't any. I'm thinking. I think I have it all. There aren't any shopping centers.
Okay, good. Uh, Shopping center. In my neighborhood, there are 2 supermarkets. There aren't any markets, just supermarkets. In my neighborhood, there aren't many clothes shops. It's a residential area, not so many clothes shops. And there are, I think, maybe 4 or 5 pharmacies. There are very many pharmacies.
Do you have a cash machine in your neighborhood? Do you have a cash machine in your neighborhood?
Oh, sorry. Um, I don't think so. No, I don't think there is any bank in my neighborhood. Do you have a cash machine in your neighborhood?
Yes, I have three cash machines in my neighborhood.
Wow. Michelle's neighborhood is something else, I'll say that
It
much.
is, it is. But of course, none of those machines belong to me.
Okay.
There is Intesa. There is the bank called Intesa. They have a cash machine. There is a smaller bank from Siena. They have a cash machine. And there is the post office, and they have a cash machine as well.
Good. Yeah. So they have for possession.
Okay, guys, what do you think? What is there in your neighborhood? Do you have a cash machine? Do you have a park? Do you have schools? Um, do you have any parks in your neighborhood?
Um, there isn't a big park, but there are some small parks, some small green spaces. In Milan, there are not so many big parks. Is there a park in your neighborhood?
Yes, I do have a park in my neighborhood. Super fancy. But it is not a very big park. It is small and it has an area for the dogs. Well, all
Oh,
dogs.
a dog park. Great.
It's part dog park and part human park.
Mhm.
Okay, I would like to review there is and there are. Would you like to read, Sean?
So there is a pharmacy. There are two hair salons. There are lots of restaurants.
There isn't a post office. There aren't a lot of shops. How often do you go to the blank? Never, always, every day, once a week, twice a month. Okay, guys, write to us and let us know what is there or what isn't there in your neighborhood. Mauricio says in the neighborhood there are many ATMs. Absolutely. Another word for cash machine is ATM.
Hmm.
Okay, so in my neighborhood, there is a church, there are two pharmacies, and there are lots of um, cafes. In my neighborhood, there isn't a school, and there aren't a lot of parks.
So in my neighborhood, there is a hair salon. There are, I think, four or five pharmacies, and there are lots of apartment blocks, apartments. There isn't a post office. There isn't a post office, and there aren't a lot of clothes shops.
Okay, you use the word apartment,
Mm.
right?
So I think many of us live in an apartment. An apartment is any building where there's not one person living in the whole building. They separate the building into sections, usually part of each floor. You live in an apartment. In England, they say a flat or an apartment. And
Hmm.
when you have a big building full of apartments, you say an apartment building or an apartment block.
Fantastic. That was a great explanation. Um, when we talk about houses, how is that different?
So houses are what you might call a villa here. It's a detached single property, usually with a garden, where you have one family living in this building. In different countries, it's more common to have houses. Certainly in Ireland and the UK, most people live in houses, but here most people live in apartments. In Pakistan, do most people live in apartments or houses?
Apartments. But it depends if you are in a city or a town or a village, right? I think most urban cities have apartments because it saves space. So Milan has a lot of apartments, London has a lot of apartments, Karachi has a lot of apartments. But if you were to go towards the countryside, where it's not so crowded, you would start seeing more houses. The same as in Ireland, I would assume.
Yeah, we really don't like apartments in Ireland for some reason. Even in Dublin,
Really?
nobody I knew lived in an apartment because in the center you have all the shops and the offices, and
Hmm.
then you leave the center and you have kind of rows and rows of houses, and everybody lives outside the center in houses.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's the
I had
culture.
no idea.
Yeah, you should visit.
I should. Donald says, in my neighborhood, there is a dog park, there is a school, there are two churches. Remember plural? And the plural of church is churches with an ES. And there isn't a cinema. Fantastic work, Donald. You've got it right. Grammar on point. Okay, let's move on to review how often. How often do you go to the blank? Okay, um, church is ES.
Yeah.
How often do you go to the post office?
I go very rarely to the post office. I don't send letters usually, so no, I would say maybe once or twice a year at Christmas, maybe.
I usually go to the post office once a month because I have a post-pay account.
Okay. Do you have an
So
account with the post office?
I do. I have an account with the post office. I have a little bancomat, which we call in English an ATM card. So I end up going there about once a month. How often do you go to the pharmacy?
I I go to the pharmacy always actually, very often. I don't know why. I like pharmacies a lot. I like to buy products in pharmacies, not medicine. I'm more interested in things like skincare and vitamins and things like this. So I go very often to the pharmacy, not at the moment, but usually, yes. How often do you go to the library, Michelle?
When I was studying, I would always be in the library. But now that I'm done, I'm done, I graduated, I haven't been to a library in a year.
Okay. Yeah, it's the same for me, definitely.
Maurizio says that in his neighborhood there is no dog park, there is a hospital, there is a sports hall, and there is no swimming pool. So you could say there isn't a swimming pool, there isn't a dog park.
Mm, very good.
Okay, this is fun. Neighborhood tour. Give a tour of your neighborhood to your friend. Describe what is there and what isn't in your neighborhood. What is there? What isn't there? How often do you go there?
Okay.
Okay, I'll start. If I was to just come out of the metro in Porto Romana, first I would on the right, right at the beginning, you would see a big McDonald's.
Ah,
So I would say there is a McDonald's. And as you move into the neighborhood, there are many shops selling clothes and household items.
mm, yeah.
So, household items are things you use in your house. There are two Chinese shops which I love because they have everything. Um,
Everything.
everything, everything. And there are two supermarkets. There are four supermarkets. Two are close by, and two are a little far. What isn't there? In my neighborhood, any. There aren't any universities,
Mm-hmm.
and there are no African restaurants.
Oh, business opportunity, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you come out of the metro in my area, there is a restaurant to your right, and there is a pharmacy, the first pharmacy beside the restaurant. There is a hardware shop, a hardware store
Mm.
where they sell tools and things for construction and working in your home, things like that. There is a kitchen shop where they sell kitchens, counters, and cookers and the things, the appliances you need for a kitchen. There is a hotel, a Best Western hotel, big
Mm-hmm.
hotel, and then there is a supermarket, a Carrefour supermarket. There isn't um a school, and there isn't a clothes shop. No clothes shops.
Fantastic. So we're almost at the end of our time. If you guys still want to write into us, go ahead. We have a few minutes and we can read out your answer on air. I think that could be fun. But let's revise everything, shall we? So first off, we have all the vocabulary we learned today. We have library, church, post office, pharmacy, school, dog park, nail salon. Okay. Do you have anything to add, Sean?
No, I think it's good to remember the other words that came up as we went, things like pills and letterbox and cathedral and bookshelf, things like that. Yeah.
Okay, so a bookshelf or a bookcase, as Sean says, is where you put your books. Pills are what are there in the picture, in picture D. It's the tiny little things you get from the pharmacy when you're sick. Okay, and what else did we say? Cathedral. Cathedral is the Duomo. Sometimes people say the Duomo Cathedral, but that's a bit unnecessary because Duomo means cathedral in English.
Yeah,
So,
you understand it.
right, so Duomo di Milano is the Cathedral of Milan.
Mhm. Good.
Um, Larissa says every day go to the baker. Okay, so just remember what we spoke about, Larissa. When you use phrases like every day, twice a week, we usually use put them at the end of the sentence. So I go to the baker every day. Or you could put it right at the beginning if you like. Every day I go to the baker. And baker is Baker. So a something small to remember. A baker is the person who makes the bread, and the bakery is the place where the bread is sold. Okay, so person and place, and they're both nouns.
Hmm.
Thank you so much for joining in, everyone. We had a lovely time talking about our neighborhoods. We hope you did as well. Sean,
Okay.
any last words?
No, no, thanks for the participation. Always good to check in with all of our students.
Bye bye.
Bye.